Magic School Bus. If you ever watch Magic School Bus, you should.
It's been a while.
And when you have kids, watch it with your kids. All right. So normal force between ramp and ground, as Vincetti was going for. Which way is it acting on the ramp?
Is,
It's between ramp and ground.
upward.
Yeah, it's perpendicular to the surfaces. Surfaces are horizontal, so it's acting this way.
Down.
Let's go to R. And then which way is it acting on the ground?
Down.
Okay. I have only two places where there's contact between objects. I have this contact and this contact. So those are the normal forces. We are done with that. Normal force is a requirement for friction that goes along with the contact. So any place there's a normal force, there's possibly friction. We know it doesn't have to be friction because those are the first several examples we did where there's box on ground, box on ground. There were normal forces without friction, but you cannot have friction without a normal force. And when we get there, it's in the formula. All right, so is there friction between ramp and ground?
No.
Yes.
Sound very confident there.
If the box going down, yes. Cause
So if the box is not sliding, there's no friction. If it is sliding, there is friction? Is that, I think that's what you just said.
I think.
You sound less confident.
Is it when it's sliding, it's friction, right? So when it's sliding, there's friction.
That there's friction down here when this is sliding? Right, Daniel?
There would be friction or else everything around here would be sliding.
All right, so which way is friction? So as the box slides down, which way does the ramp want to go? So which way is friction acting on the ramp? So a number of people pointing this way. So it's a sliding down box, yeah. It's basically like, squeezing on a tube of toothpaste that wants to squirt out in that direction. So this is F, I'll just do R and then F sub R.
Then we double quick.
We have only two places where there's normal force pair, so those are the two places where we have friction. So we are done with that. We are finished with this force diagram.
So if the box wasn't on the ramp, there wouldn't be friction between the ramp and the ground?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Time to add another force. Box on, box suspended. Speaking of which, just a little side note here. My paternal grandmother's family, there was the brother-in-law was an engineer, and they were working in the Soviet Union shortly after the communists took over. Before that, they were the mortal enemies. And so while they were in the Soviet Union, their daughter got suspended, was found smoking on campus, on college campus, and was suspended for it. And so it turns out that when things were sent to the Soviet Union at that time, they were probably for the next several decades, the letters would come in, they would be translated into Russian and then translated back into English just in case there was a code or something like that into it. So what they got was not your daughter was suspended for smoking, it was that your daughter was hung for minor offenses. So I'm not quite sure how I would react if I got a letter like that. So anyway, it is suspended, or hung if you want to go more violent. I guess it would be hanged. So we have, boom, all right. And then a rope. Now this is an ideal rope. And we will deal with an ideal rope for quite a few chapters. At some point we'll take some of the ideal away. But the ideal rope has three major characteristics. One, it is stretchless. We're not gonna have one part of the rope moving while the another part is not. It is massless. And in terms of interacting with anything except at the ends, it is frictionless. So an ideal rope will not turn a pulley. At some point, we will add friction to the rope. In 251, sometimes we will take away the massless aspect, but we keep stretchless throughout at least the beginning courses. How many objects do we have? Pardon?
Well, never mind.
You want one object, two objects?
It's two, because it's a rope in the box.
3.
What's the third?
Ceiling.
Oh, that's true, I guess there is.
Yeah.
There is a ground in there somewhere, sorry about that. So I will go with 3 on that. And you're going to the ceiling? I'm gonna leave ceiling off for right now.
So no pipes, like holding them.
There's a reason why I wanna leave that, we don't know what's holding the rope up. Because I'm actually gonna introduce 2 forces right now. All right, so ground, box, and rope. Start with the easy one.
No,
Oh, sorry.
the rope doesn't move at all.
Right.
Basically, it's a pipe as right now.
Oh, as in just a stiff object?
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably could treat it as such. All right, so let's set the easy ones.
Gravity between the box and the ground.
Someone else want to say it?
Wait.
Potato, potato, is that what you're thinking?
Same.
So we have this weight acting down on the box. They come in pairs.
Upward. The ground on the box.
All right. The rope has no mass, that's the massless aspect, and therefore we are done with gravitational force. Now on the test, sometimes a student will put a weight acting between the rope and the ground, and that's fine, I don't take off for that. I generally just circle it and write IGN, or something that actually looks more like that, which means ignore. It means I'm not counting it for or against if you include weight of the rope. All right, and normal force?
Oh, ground and box.
Why not? You're shaking your head no. Yeah. Normal force is a pushing force. The box is not touching the ground at all. You have that look like you don't believe it.
No, I do believe, I just don't get it.
Right now, there's a normal force between you and the chair, and I assume you can feel it. All right. That's because you're in contact with it. However, is there a normal force between you and that chair? Why not? Yeah, same thing here. The box is not touching the ground. The box is not holding the ground up. Oh, sorry, the ground is not holding the box up.
Okay.
Normal force is what keeps one object from going through another.
Normal force on the rope.
Okay. How is the rope attached to the box? Yeah, we don't know. Now, it could be an eye hook there and the rope is attached to it like that, in which case that force is a normal force. Or it could be that the rope is embedded in the block like this, in which case it's a friction force. We don't know. And when we don't know what is causing a rope to be tight, that is what we call tension. And this is the new force. There's tension holding this up. The symbol I use for tension is an F with a lowercase, with a subscript T, and there's a tension over here. This is the tension keeping the rope tight. This tension on here is the one that's holding the box up.
See, that's friction, right?
This is tension,
That is tension.
tension. Now, I used to use capital T for tension, and it would make perfect sense, and it's really convenient. The reason I don't do capital T for tension is that later on in the course, at some point in April, we will have an equation which has tension and period in it. The symbol used for period is a capital T. So I don't want to use capital T for tension here and then get in April and go, all right, we've been using this letter for tension, now we're going to change it. So this is why I'm using F sub T now. Now on a test, some students will still use capital T for tension. I don't take off for that, that's fine. Basically, whatever symbol you're using, it needs to be something where I can go, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So tension. Almost feel like we're playing hangman there. Now, is the rope falling? What's holding the rope up?
Magic.
Is that idealism? Anyone want to go for artistically correct? If you're not familiar with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I recommend you listen to the radio plays. I assume it's in the books too, but. All right, we don't know what's holding it up. This is an example of other. When you're putting in a force diagram, forces always come in pairs, and there's some force acting up on the rope, and there's some force acting down on some other object. There's some mystery object over here. But other is the case when you don't care or you don't academically care, or you don't know what's causing that force. The other category generally falls for textbook problems. A 5 Newton force is pushing on a box. You have no idea what's causing this 5 Newton force, you just know there's a 5 Newton force. That's an example of what I call other. And one of the reasons I call it other is I needed a vowel. F-tong. Fortnog, you know. I couldn't come up with a single word with those letters. Now, it will be a tension of some sort because at the end of each rope there's a tension, but I just wanted an example of other. Now, the symbol I use for it becomes flexible. So technically it is a tension. But you could also, because we don't know exactly what's over here, then you can put some other letter on there too. Let's talk a little bit about tension, go into that. So the requirement is a taut rope, chain, string, something. The direction is a spades with respect to the objects. It is along the line of the taut, rope, chain, string, whatever it happens to be. And the direction with respect to each other. As you can see right here, they point towards each other. The pulling forces are pointing towards each other. Gravitational force is a pulling force. The pushing forces point away from each other. So now, we can make it more sophisticated.
Oh, we don't with this?
Yeah, I just wanted to introduce the extra forces. All right, questions before we do 2 boxes and a pulley and a ramp? Yeah, we'll get to the decimal problem before we're done. We'll keep that checklist there. I'm just going to redraw that drawing over here. How many objects are involved here?
4,
Which four are you thinking?
the 2 boxes, the ramp. Oh, no, there's more.
Is there 6?
What six are you thinking of?
The box, the rope,
The
is the
boxes,
yes, boxes.
boxes, the rope.
The ramp, is the pulley one part or 2 parts? Or are
You
we,
think like stem and ball or wheel?
and the ground?
I left this open right here to indicate that the ramp and the ground are part of the same thing.
Okay.
All right, this question of, you might consider that there's 6 objects there, you might consider that there's 4 objects there. There's a wide variety. You could even, if you really wanted to torture yourself, you could break this into, well, there's the top part of the ramp and the bottom part of the ramp.
I got you.
And then you can break the ramp up into smaller pieces. You actually break it up into every single atom involved here. So how do you know how many parts to break it up into? On the test, on test 1B, this is not the test that comes up on the 18th, this is the one after it. On the complex problem, I break it up for you, just so that there's not that debate over, is the pulley part of it or not? When it comes down to actually more free-form physics problems, it depends on what they're asking. Probably in a question like this, it's what's the acceleration of the 2 boxes? In which case, the boxes are really the ones that we care about, and everything else could be, so we have box, and then everything else. But for this, I want to break it up into box 1, box 2, rope, and then everything else. The pulley is part of the ground. Now this pulley is no ordinary pulley. It is an ideal pulley. Ideal pulley has 2 characteristics. It is massless, and it is frictionless. In other words, our ideal rope is just going to slide right over the pulley, and the pulley's just going to sit there. The pulley is not going to notice anything sliding over it.
What? No, confused.
But
What do you mean, like slide over?
the example that we would have here is a broken pulley. But what I'm talking about is, let's grab one of the really bad pulleys. So if this were an ideal pulley and an ideal rope, what I'm talking about is the rope is just going to slide over it. Pretend it's sliding over it, slide over it, and the pulley doesn't turn. That's what I'm talking about. Pulley starting, we will get to in chapter 9 or 10, somewhere around there, when we add friction between them. All right, so I got 4 objects here. We have our checklist of forces. F-tong. It'd be really cool if someone who hasn't spoken yet would just chime in with the first one. And don't forget, this is physics. It's okay to be cool.
Weight on the second
All right.
one, it's going down,
On 2,
yeah,
all right.
and then the ground, it's going up, the weight going up.
Single box.
People who aren't speaking, you don't know what you're missing. All right, we have only 3 objects besides the ground, since ramp and ground are one object. What about on the rope?
It's tension.
It's tension.
No, is there weight on the rope?
No,
Why not?
because it's an ideal rope.
Right, all right. So gravitational force, we're done. All right, next. Let's say friction for last. I know friction's the exciting one.
what was N?
What's in?
Wait, hold on, N was Y, right?
That's the letter I use is Y.
That's hard.
Be normal
Yeah, okay. Stands for normal.
between box one and the ramp,
Which way is it acting on box one?
relatively up from the ramp.
All right. The ramp is pushing the box away, so we got Y1 here and Y1 here.
Wait, what? What did it go that way?
Normal force is perpendicular. Normal force is what's pushing the box away. Normal force is always perpendicular to the surface.
So what about two then?
What's not touching it?
Same thing. Oh,
No.
why?
Did you hear what, I think it was Chris?
It's not touching anything.
Box two, there's no normal force between box two and the ground. You could call that rookie mistake number 6, whatever we're up to now. Sometimes they'll do normal force between box 2 and the side of the ramp over here. Again, no contact.
On the rope and the pulley?
Say it again?
On the rope and the pulley?
Yes, there's the normal force there. Now, the rope is touching the pulley basically from this point around to this point, somewhere in there. I did not give you enough information to know the exact direction of the normal force here, but I know it's gotta be somewhere in that range right there. And so I'm just gonna generically, it's in that direction, excuse me, Y sub R or P, whichever one you like. And then Y sub P.
Wait, what was F2? Friction?
Friction, tension, other, normal, gravitational. In terms of contacts, those are we taking care of the 2 pairs of objects that are in contact. So,
Friction.
I'm gonna wait until friction at the end.
It's not other, right?
Correct, there is no other.
Tension between box one and the rope.
Okay, which way is it acting on one of them?
Towards the rope.
So towards the rope here or towards the rope here?
Go down, just,
Going down on which one?
the rope.
Going down on the rope?
Yeah,
Like that?
and then the box will go,
Yeah, there's gotta be something pulling the rope tight. This is the force that's pulling the rope tight. Right there. And?
and the second box, it will be going up, and then the friction down. Yeah.
All right. At this point, this is perfectly fine. I do need to make commentary, so when it looks like people finish writing, I'm going to comment on the subscripts.
Well, hold on. So friction and tension are the same?
No, tension is separate. We're doing tension right now.
I see F.
Yeah, we're gonna do friction last.
No, FT.
Oh, I had a dash in it before, F-tom. Each letter stands for a different thing. All right, so in terms of pairs of forces have to have the same subscript. And so in terms of pairs of forces, this is a pair right here, and that is a pair right there. So if you're doing subscripts, they have a subscript and they have a subscript. These have to have the same as each other, these have the same as each other. If it is an ideal rope, then the tension at each end is the same magnitude. So in a case like this, you don't have to have subscript because I have one rope here. If I had a second rope, I'd have to do subscripts, but I have one rope here. This tension and this tension are the same as long as it's ideal. When we introduce friction, we'll do away with that. But friction on the rope. But if you're doing subscripts, you got 1, 1, and 2, 2. But at this point, those subscripts are optional.
So you won't take off for those?
I do not,
Okay.
just so long as they have the same subscript. they have the same substrate.
Right.
All right, now, questions of this before we discuss friction? All right, there is friction, only place friction can exist is where there's a normal force. We have two pairs of normal forces, here and here. I know there's no friction acting here because it's an ideal rope and pulley and there's no friction there. So this is the only place that friction might exist. Which way is friction acting on the box? That way. Anyone want to make an argument for the other direction?
Would there be two sets of friction?
Well, the box wants to go this way, which means it'd be the ground or the ramp would be pushing that way, right?
How do you know the box wants to go that way?
Box wants to go that way because box 2 is pulling it.
Represent the weight.
All right, so there's part of me, sometimes great discussions come out of it, so I'm gonna sort of stop that. I apologize for that part. There's not actually enough information in the problem for you to know which way the box is gonna go. In a frictionless situation, which way it's gonna go depends upon this angle and it depends upon those masses. And I did not give you that information. And next week, you will, yeah, because the test is in 2 weeks from Tuesday. So next Thursday, we will get into a problem, we'll definitely be getting into a problem where you'll be able to solve that. But for right now, you don't have enough information. So with something like this, I would have to tell you. So for the sake of this, let's assume mass 2 falls. So if mass 2 is falling, or descending, which way is the friction acting on mass 1?
Same way, FT.
No, it's going
Option.
Yeah, because if mass 2 is falling, that means mass 1 has to be going up. The friction doesn't like that. Friction hates change. No, that's probably not a good way of saying it. Friction hates movement.
I saw one of your videos, you talked about in there that you don't like the fact that someone described it as being lazy.
Yeah.
Is that like a personal thing, or is that like a?
It's just a bad definition.
Okay.
I mean, I assume I went into the latrine, digging a latrine example. Yeah. Laziness, you don't want to do anything, you want to stop. And inertia is not about stopping, it's about changing.
So is there any friction on the second box then?
It's, the only thing that's touching is the rope, and that's a tension between those two. So no, we're done. All right, so what I'm gonna say we do here is let's take a 5-minute break while I draw up the test level problem, and then we'll do a test level problem. And just so I'm not recording blank space.